Welcome, everybody, to Finding Hermes. I hope you're ready to go through some doors and leave your cards on the table as we all go finding our own Hermes, our mind, our lost mind, and the potential in there. This is episode 5, and with us, we have the pleasure of being joined by Derek Hunter. Derek, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you. Thank you, Miguel. And thank you for having me on here again. It was a great pleasure for me, talking to you last time. It was very, very meaningful and just really, profound for me on a personal level. And a lot of other people responded really well to it. I got a lot of good responses from people with that interview. So it was a pleasure talking to you and knowing you and very happy to be back here.
Yeah, enjoyed it too. And it's been almost a year. Came out late 2019 or early 2020. Right. And my God, how things have changed. It looks like we're living in a different world. So we have different needs. And I contend we have higher spiritual needs and psychological needs, and we must reach them. Hence the idea of finding Hermes. And you came out with your new book that you started before the world changed in 2020, but I think it's a very appropriate title. I have the book here. I'm sure I will put an image here as we go through the interview, but it's, put it right in front. But The End of the World, a love chaos grimoire for the survival and evolution of human beings. So appropriate book, but did you change this book at all once the pandemic hit, or what was the process of your new book?
Well, the book is based on a 6-day ritual that I did from March 6th through March 11th. So on the last day of the ritual was when COVID-19 was declared a pandemic. And so the timing of it was certainly odd. My motivation to do the book was coming from my response to climate change and seeing that as a threat. So that was my main focus of doing the ritual and writing the book. So when I was writing the book, it was actually during while the pandemic was becoming a big deal. And I actually at the time, later that month, in the beginning of April, got very ill with coronavirus symptoms and was actually I couldn't work for 3 weeks. Wow. There was a time where it really got bad and I had a hard time breathing and went to the emergency room. But I was tested and was not positive for coronavirus. I've never have been. I've been tested maybe 8 or 9 times and I've always been negative. So, but during those 3 weeks while I was ill, I was writing intensely on the book. And, I think that the coronavirus is just one more element to the threat that we face, the challenges that we face for sure. And, I still feel that climate change is still the biggest threat. I've really throughout my work in fiction or nonfiction with Love Chaos, I've really tried to stay away from being too polemical, too political. But I feel like with climate change, it's one area that it does transcend that. And being a father to a 15-year-old son, my 15-year-old son, I looking at his future and his children's future. And so I really felt like I've been practicing magic for over 10 years now. And most of my work has been about personal transformation and helping myself. Uh-huh. And like in our last interview, we talked about my past issues with substance use and other psychological issues that I've had to deal with and overcome. And I've used magic to help me with that. And so having known that, seeing how magic can work, I felt that, well, why not do something big and try to do whatever practice that I have, expand it, enlarge it, to put an effort and in my will into the universe, and however small that may be, it would just be, putting it out there to affect change. So I think that with the COVID situation the way it is now, I think that it's definitely something serious that we have to handle and take care of. And my hope is with this book, it will encourage practitioners to begin to understand that our work can be used not just for our own personal benefit, but also can help be on a larger scale, can help our species. And certainly, I think that that could be used towards pandemics like coronavirus or diseases, and we can certainly use our work for the betterment of humanity.
And but what is the goal? You talk about your books, Love Chaos and Love Chaos Theory and Practice. What is the purpose? And as you just mentioned, these are for the expansion of consciousness, more harmony in your mind, addiction, just better interpersonal relationships. But what is the goal of this ritual in relation to, let's say, world environment? I mean, is this a ritual for the individual, or to change the world, or a collective transformation? What is the goal?
So the goal is for the survival and evolution of human beings. So it would be that, as I talk about in the book, we want to try to do our best to make it so that living on Earth will be extended for as long as possible. But the science is showing that really the chances of us surviving this century is pretty slim in terms of human beings living on this planet. And so the intention of the ritual was for us to survive, number one. And so then this, in many ways, will be surviving on Earth, but also surviving elsewhere, whether it be Mars. And that, when I was doing the ritual and as I was communicating with the spirits who were speaking to me in the scrying aspect, much of what I was hearing in terms of the voices when they were speaking to me was that the direction of the survival of our species would be off this planet. And but in terms of doing the best we can for making life on this planet livable for as long as we can, will strengthen the possibility of more people leaving this planet. Obviously, not everyone's going to be able to do that, but so really, and then there's the evolutionary aspect to it too. I didn't want it to only be about survival. My intention of the ritual and the book was about evolution, and I view that humanity has done tremendous amount of extraordinary things in the past, and we can reach back and regain a lot of that insight. But I really truly believe that there's still a lot of work to be done. We can still develop ourselves personally, interpersonally, and as a whole, as a species. So a lot of what I was doing there was not just about survival, but was about evolution. And through the work that I was doing, sending these spirits out into the universe to affect that change.
Awesome. But now the game has changed a bit. I mean, I was reading today about long lines for food pantries. Lots of people have lost their jobs. People are starting to grow hungry, not just in this country, but food supply chains are broken. So they're talking millions of children will soon be suffering from starvation. Obviously, fear, addiction, anxiety, depression, all these things are affecting a lot of Westerners. So now it seems the game has changed a bit. How has the coronavirus changed your spiritual work or attitude, or what you focus on?
Well, I mean, I don't think the coronavirus has necessarily changed a lot of how I view life, or the world around us, because for my philosophy of love chaos, it views that the nature to existence is chaos. The nature to life is unpredictability, and a lot of times things happen which we cannot predict or control. And so the point of love chaos is that we want to, for me, and for whoever else wants to follow the path of love chaos, is that you focus as much of your attention and energy on love, and that was one of the biggest motivators behind this ritual, was a love for my son and his future, and the love for humanity. And I really feel that because things are getting worse, and as bad as 2020 was, there's a good chance that 2021 may get worse, and we may see things continue to go in that direction. And I think that many people are going to reach towards a lot of different philosophies and spiritualities to provide some consolation. Some people may join really extreme spiritualities or political groups, because when we live in extreme times, people tend to reach towards extreme solutions. And so for me, I'm agnostic, gnostic, which of course sounds oxymoronic. I think we talked about that in the last interview. But for me, what's really helped me tremendously is my agnosticism, is my doubt and my uncertainty and my embrace of that. So it to me, it's grounded me. And in my own way, my own small way, I hope to put that energy and that out there, because I know that there's going to be a lot of extreme ideas out there. Already is. And so I want my voice to be a voice of acceptance of uncertainty, but in some way not reaching towards extreme reactions.
Yeah, well said. It reminds me of the story of Descartes' demon, where Descartes wondered if very much an agnostic idea, if everything he was seeing out there was just an illusion of some evil demon that wanted to torture him. Right. And the demon could even have fooled him to think 1 + 1 = 2. But Descartes realizes was the road to reason and enlightenment, was doubt. Maybe everything was a lie, but the idea that he could doubt and question even mathematics was something that could lead him to a place of reason and stability. So I think that works with your ideas of chaos and the unpredictable universe, and how you just have to embrace it. But right. I think, but obviously these times are very unusual, very stressful. Like you said, the apocalypse doesn't care about calendars. It's not going to say January 1st, I'm back to normal, I'm going on vacation, and forget about the election and just wipe it off your head. We're going to go back to the days of being able to go to Burning Man or your friends. Things are going to change. So I always want to make sure we give people the advice and the choices today, because in our last interview, which I advise the viewers and the listeners to take a look, Derek really breaks down the philosophy of love chaos, gives a lot of choices. And what we want to do here is give choices. But one thing I wanted to ask you on your personal level and how you deal with things is, what about fear? What are some techniques you use to overcome fear? Because obviously you're very syncretic, like most people in the occult. You draw and you try to find a system that works for you. But tell us how you overcome fear and anxiety.
Well, that for me, it is a struggle. It's a daily struggle, and it's something that I think, in terms of how I respond to anxiety or fear, those thoughts, those feelings that happen within me, I think that going back to doubt what I find interesting is that a lot of times people's perspective on doubt is that this notion of doubting ourselves and questioning ourselves and lack of belief in ourselves is a negative thing. And I think what the people get confused with is that we get these thoughts or these feelings come to us, whether they're from within us or outside of us, whatever their nature is, they happen to us. We have these fears, they happen. And so my feeling is that it's actually not doubt that is the problem. It's belief in those ideas. We have a thought about, say we have an insecurity, say that we feel that, our wife doesn't love us, or our children don't appreciate us, or whatever it may be, that from that point on will basically continue with like in a domino effect. Like one thought after another thought after another thought will happen that will increase the feelings of low self-worth, of depression, of anxiety, and continue to expand. And my feeling is that what's happening there is that people are actually attaching belief to those things, that these feelings or these fears that are coming at us are in some way attacking us. And when you see it for that, if you are able to embrace doubt, then you don't believe these things. You can look at it and see like there may be some truth there, because otherwise, why would I believe it? But it ultimately, if I look at the bigger picture, if I step back and see that there's actually a lot more evidence to show that my wife loves me, or that my kids appreciate me, or whatever it may be, that I have these other elements. So that's what I do, is that I have to step back. I meditate every day. I do meditations and prayers every day, every morning to get my day started. And that helps to put me in the right frame of mind so that as I deal with life's situations, I'm able to see things for what they are and not necessarily have to believe in those things. I think that's a big problem, is that people believe in what's coming at them, and you don't have to.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Something I'm trying to spread through the shows is had a past guest, Rachel Connerly, and we did a show on Jung, and a lot of things we weren't able to really focus on fully, which we will do in the future. But one of our insights studying other Jungian analysts is that when we get these feelings of depression and eventually suicide, we think that we need to destroy the body. Our ego assumes that this information that's coming from the unconscious, these energies that are blocked that are coming in, are telling us that we must die physically, or the depression tells us we must collapse completely. But what the message is always, it's not the body that must die, it's our worldview that must die. If our ego doesn't understand it and doesn't want to go on the soul building journey that it's supposed to go with our soul, so it assumes it must die. But if we see it that something in our worldview, or our entire worldview, has to die for something new, which 2020 is a great opportunity, then things change. And like you said, these thoughts, when I have these thoughts, I realize it's not, they're not bad. It's not my soul or my unconscious trying to torture me. It's sending me a message, and it's a useful message. My ego is blocking it and trying to fight it, but there is treasure there when I listen to the message of my ego, and I can work with it. Again, even if it's Descartes' demon, as you know, in your book, Chronozon, or Satan, or Lucifer, or Yaldabaoth, they are testing our egos, and they are benign, beneficial beings if we listen to their challenges. So I think that's how it ties in with your ideas of beliefs. Our beliefs are torturing us, so we must change our beliefs as much as often as possible. Destroy them and start new.
Yeah, I definitely think that, however you want to identify whatever these things are coming to do harm. I think that's a good attitude to take, is that you have, rather than seeing it as a thing that's going to destroy you, you see it as a challenge, and seeing it as something that maybe it's pointing to something that you're not looking at. And maybe it does have a beneficial side to it. I think that's a really good attitude to take, so that when people are confronted with the challenge or something painful or stressful, that it's maybe there's an element to it that it is like say an enemy to me, but also maybe it is something that is trying to tell you something. And I think that when we look at it in that way, sure, because I think a lot of times when we feel pain, we feel frustration or stress, it's because we have a certain attitude towards the experience, and the attitude is maybe what we need to change, and how we can,
Yeah, and I mean, I advise people, don't feel it's your soul or your mind is being antagonistic. I'm sure you can agree, you're laying in bed in the middle of the night, you want to sleep, and some horrible memory just comes rushing at you from nowhere, and you're like, why did this memory come to me? Damn it, I'm trying to sleep. Or you're doing something and I'm sure you think of the days when we were doing drugs and drinking. It's like, do I have to revisit this shit again? And it used to drive me crazy. Like, when am I going to be done? And just this year I said, no, it's, these are good things. My soul is sending me these messages for my benefit. So something I need to address, something I need to look into. So don't get all stressed out and angry. Just said, okay, what's the message behind it? Let me meditate it. And sometimes between us, I know that the mind is a trickster. Sometimes I swear my soul or my mind is sending me these things just to shitpost, sending me a message just to mess with my head. And I'll go like into this meditation where I scream at my mind, is like, is this really valid? Is this really real? And sometimes it will just dissipate. But most of the time, if I just allow this feeling, I meditate on it, this image, I try to understand it and have the attitude it's there to help me and help me build into a better person, deal with these feelings, then things work out much better. I don't have to be tortured anymore by the past as us, drug addicts and other people, because we have a long list of crimes and things we did wrong in the past.
Definitely. Yes, definitely. I think that the past is there, and certainly we don't want to, dwell on it perhaps, but definitely we get those memories, those thoughts from the past. I think they're really good reminders, in my work in helping people. It's a lot of times, especially if people have trying to get over an addiction, is a lot of times the opposite may happen in terms of like a nightmarish memory. It's actually the opposite. They'll remember the good times. They'll remember the good highs, all this sexiness that applies to it, the romanticizing it, the lifestyle. And that can, start to overwhelm a person. That's where why a lot of people, I think, relapse, is that they remember all that stuff. And if we forget all the horrible stuff that we did or had or happened to us while we were during those times, that can help check us and put it in balance in terms of understanding, well, the reality of it, right? Again, going back to just seeing all the different evidence of like our past, not just hanging on to one memory, but looking at the big picture of it, and can stop people from relapsing into a behavior or a drug,
Yeah, well said. And even your book, Love Chaos, talks about discomfort as one of the themes, how to deal with the discomfort of life. Another tool I say is, I just say, look, I'm a human being. Depression, anxiety, fear come with the package. Nothing to be ashamed of. I'm not different. And it's part of my humanity, and that's just fine. And again, Hermes is not trying to destroy us. He's actually trying to lead us through a door with these memories, these feelings, and everything else. But yeah, that's one of the themes in your book, is how to deal with discomfort.
Yeah. When I was trying to think of how to describe the way I feel that a lot of us feel, like exactly what you're talking about, was this idea of this discomfort of living. And I really feel strongly that it's present in everyone, and all animals too. We're always, just the unpredictability of things causes us to be in that way. And there's a negative side to it for sure, but I don't think it's all negative. It's like with chaos, there's certainly a negative aspect to it, but it's not all negative. Just like you say, like just understanding and embracing that these feelings that I may have, that we call depression and anxiety, are part of our nature. And we certainly wouldn't be able to experience joy or self-confidence or pleasure or love without these insecurities. These insecurities are really in place to, I think, experience love in a really genuine way. If there was no pain and there wasn't any of these difficulties, then I think the love in the world or the happiness in the world would be less authentic.
Yeah, as I tell people, or as I've been saying, listen to the gods, your inner self. And if there's discomfort, it's usually your ego does not want to go with some new plan, some new system, some new insight. So that's where so much pain is, blockages. Some people say blockages in your chakras. Whatever tradition, you'll find this analogy. I think as we humans, we have the potential to be divine and to do the right thing and to grow organically. But and as you say, as it evolves, but it's a matter of just finding those streams and unblocking those energies and go on that soul building journey that we were meant to be. And I'm talking about Hermes and gods and all that. And one thing I like about your work, Derek, is the idea of really mythologizing things, grabbing on to some tale or legend or god and letting that guide you through life. Could you tell the audience a little bit about that? And certainly prevalent in your work. A lot of gods, a lot of figures are there guiding you, even if you're agnostic at the end of the day.
Right. Yes. Well, that's definitely something that I think it's important to know, is that for me, I have a lot of entities that I work with that are a big part of my life, and that are a big part of this mythology. And not only in my work as a practitioner of magic, but also in my writing, my storytelling. A lot of these entities find their way in my work as a writer, in my stories. And so for me, this notion of a mythology, what I like to call it a mythology, is because when we generally think of mythology, we think of something from the past. We think of it being also like a myth, not true. And if we can call our beliefs and the entities we work with a part of a mythology, I think that it can help to provide a little bit of distance from this experience of our belief systems. Now, this doesn't mean that for me, I'm very passionate. I'm very passionate about a lot of things in life. And I think that a lot of times people think that agnostics cannot be passionate. They don't have convictions. They just doubt everything, right?
Sit around shrugging their shoulders.
Right. And so for me, that's not the case. I think it's important for people to know what my form of agnosticism is that, so I have a lot of practices and I have a lot of entities that I work with. And for me, the way it works is that as an agnostic, I accept two different possibilities. One possibility is that all these entities that I work with, the spirit world, so to speak, or whatever other the unseen that I work with, that I feel that it is there in the universe, maybe not in the material universe, but it exists in some way, actually does exist. That there is a real objective truth to these entities, to this dimension, that it's a reality. So I'm willing to accept that, and that it's real. On the other hand, I'm also willing to accept the possibility that it's all in the imagination, in my imagination, that there is no real objective truth to these entities or to the spiritual, even to my own soul. Now, I tend to lean towards the belief in these things. And I tend to lean in that way, but I also feel for me, it helps to be able to accept that it is purely psychological, that these are tools that are beneficial in a psychological sense, an intellectual sense, an emotional sense, that has no real reality or existence out of the material world. Then I'm fine. If science could explain all that I work with in a materialistic sense, I'm not at war with materialism. I'm not fully embracing it either. I'm not at war with it, and I'm not like a champion for materialism. And I feel that helps me. I feel I'm not going to try to say that magic is the same as science. I think they share some similarities, but there really are two different modes of going about arriving at conclusions or goals. And certainly, I think you can bring some scientific ways, the theory, method into practices of magic, but I wouldn't say that it's in the same area for me, So I I feel that having said this, so having said that there's these two different possibilities for me, I go ahead and I've created a mythology that suits me. And when I tell people that it's really important to find something that works for you. And so for me, a lot of what I do is about inversion. So in my writing, going back a long time ago, one of my favorite novels is Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of Dostoevsky. And for anyone who knows Dostoevsky, they know that he was very spiritual, and he was Christian, and he has a Christian message basically in his novels, very spiritual, very humanistic, but then he's also, a lot of his books are about questioning things and doubt, and certainly a lot of his characters who represent questioning the spirituality, questioning God, are very strong characters. So one can imagine that he had a side to him that did question things, that did doubt his own beliefs. And that's what I find really interesting about him. But so for me, I like the story of Raskolnikov and his sort of his mental state and how disturbed he was, how he committed a murder, how he tried to justify it, and what happened to him afterwards. So I ended up writing a novel. It's called I. And it's about opening the third eye, and it's through a process that is completely different in many ways, not 100%, but very different from Dostoevsky's philosophy. And in my version of the story, the murder by the main character was committed in self-defense, and it wasn't a planned or weirdly justified murder like Raskolnikov's. And then he doesn't turn himself in. Like the big major conclusion for Crime and Punishment is that he turns himself in. He basically accepts guilt. And for me, in my philosophy, a big part of what I do is overcoming guilt. It's accepting responsibility, but it is not, so to speak, kneeling or being subject to the oppression of an authority that I feel is unjust. For me, authority is important, and we need to have authority. But if it's unjust, I will not. If it's trying to do me harm or do others harm, I won't bow to it. So coming from this perspective, I created in the last 10 years of mythology from that. And so for me, I explained that I'm an agnostic, and I'm also a Gnostic in my own way. And the third component of my mythology is I'm a Luciferian. And so for me, Lucifer is the entity that represents liberation. And in my mythology, I have the sort of the top entity at the very top is what I would call no thing. It's beyond explanation. It's beyond definition. And so under that are for me, the two first male and female components to existence. The male is chaos and the female is Babalon. This was heavily influenced, of course, by Thelema and Crowley. And if you look in terms of the ancient Greeks as well, chaos is a big component to their mythology. And then in terms of the Thelemites, seeing that chaos was the consort to Babylon, so it was something that appealed to me. And this notion that Babylon is the mother to us all and will accept us all as well, will accept us. She's also the holy whore. So she is also will not turn anyone away, being the holy whore. The only price that she asks is your own ego. And so from this starting point, we all have egos, and I don't think it can be completely destroyed, but I think the process of limiting our ego is a healthy process. And for me, my relationship with Babylon is about that. That I am special, but I am by no means, there's infinite other expressions in the universe on our planet of other beings. And I think that are just as special and unique and beautiful. And so for me, my demiurge, so to speak, is the character you mentioned, is Choronzon. And so for him, he represents a response to that. And his response to his mother is that, no, I'm the one that matters most. Right. Everything is revolved around me. I am the one that matters. And then flips the mythology and actually denies his parents. He denies the existence of a mother figure, denies the existence of chaos as the father figure, and says that no, I am the one that created everything. I am God.
Yaldabaoth right there.
Right. Yeah. So this is a mythology for me, and I feel like Choronzon exists in all of us. Choronzon is the insecurity that we all have. The whenever we feel strong feelings of jealousy, and then hang on to those feelings of jealousy. Whenever we feel strong feelings of hate, and we hang on to those feelings of hate, hating other people, the feeling of destroying others. I think it all stems from this really deeply rooted aspect to existence that you find not only in human beings, but in all life forms. And so for me, Lucifer is not a fallen angel. For me, Lucifer is Choronzon's brother, and they're equals in a sense. And Lucifer is the light bringer and is the liberator. So everything that Choronzon is, Lucifer is not. And from there, there's more to my system that I have, other entities that I work with, but those are the main ones.
Yes, and you mention it in your other books, but in your new book, The End of the World, you list them all, and it's fascinating. And it's certainly with the Gnostic spirit, you talk about reversing things. The Gnostics were always about deconstruction, destroying the normal worldview, making Cain and the serpent of the garden into the heroes, to making Osiris into the villain. I mean, they were throwing things upside down so they could find those spaces where they could explore new possibilities and trick the demiurge of the world and find something new. So I think it's important we all do that, embrace these new myths, because myths are closer to the archetypal world and their energies, and they are eternal and they have lessons. And as Joseph Campbell said, they are the secret language of the spirit. That's how we learn things, but we got to move these things around. And remember, what did Harold Bloom say? The Gnostic ethos is that what can be destroyed must be destroyed. And also reminds me of the famous Jewish scholar Gershom Scholem, when asking what is the Kabbalah, he said, it's the revenge of the myth. It's myth coming at you at full speed and going to rock your world and create a completely new being when it's over. So,
right. I think you really hit the nail on the head. I think that it's really important because a lot of times people they latch on to beliefs, and rather than growing it stops their growth. I think that it's really important that people find ways to expand themselves and not to hinder themselves. And in a lot of ways, people unfortunately will find a belief, hold on to it, and so strongly because of the fact that they're just scared of the uncertainty of life, the fears of life, and whatever may be they feel is a threat. And turning things upside down is a great way to open yourself up. And it certainly, won't be nice and easy. There will be threats and from other people who will see your beliefs as a threat. Certainly, the moment that I say I'm a Luciferian, people jump to conclusions and think all kinds of things, and actually that's why I'm very hesitant to reveal that. And everything that I was just mentioning to you right now is not something I really go around just telling everyone, because the moment people start hearing it, then they just start thinking I'm crazy. It's just like, how could you believe these things? It's just like, way the hell out of there. It's just like, you're a wacko.
Well, it's just a story. As I tell people, we human beings, we work better with stories and narratives than we do with facts. It's the way our mind is created.
That's interesting.
It's right. How we grow and cope with the world, not through facts, but through our stories.
Right. I think you said another great thing right there, is that I think this is what it's important for people. What helps me and what other people, I think would help other people, is this, that people want to pick a side, right? They want to pick, like, I believe firmly in science. I'm a materialist. I'm an atheist, or whatever. All this spirituality, metaphysics, occult stuff is a bunch of hogwash and is a real threat to humanity. But the problem is, like, a lot of what you find, and I know from my own personal experiences, if this is the worldview that you have, then it's really hard to live day by day by that, to be honest. Because you're right, is that the human mind and our emotions actually does respond better to things that are not necessarily factual, because we have this imagination and we go on a roller coaster of emotions a lot of times that, like, objective science doesn't really help us deal with that. And so, and then on the other hand, you have people who see science as a threat, and that it's completely wrong, and that it's something that there's some evil people behind it that are trying to destroy the world. And I don't honestly feel like that way at all. I think that there's so much that has benefited us from science. And so it's just this relationship. One doesn't have to replace the other, but in understanding that they're both really necessary,
Yeah, well said indeed. As when you have in history both Anakin Skywalker and George W. Bush saying you're either with us or against us, that's a bad thing, to stay away from it. Although, however, I think Jesus says that in the New Testament. I'm just going to say somebody put those words in his mouth, because I think Jesus was wrong on that one too, because obviously compassion, trying to understand your enemies, loving your enemies. And at the end of the day, you just have to say, they're afraid. I'm afraid. That's why we're digging our heels in. We don't want to let go. We don't want to embrace the chaos.
Right. Well, and that's I think that's the problem with a lot of literalist Christians, is that they take everything he said literally. And I think if you were to take everything in the Bible literally, you honestly could become a schizophrenic, because there's so much in it that's so contradictory, and so it just. Yeah,
there is this saying, I forget who said it. It was a humanist, and I'll probably just flash it across the screen, but he said, if you were to believe everything in the Old Testament literally, you would be a criminal. Follow everything in the Old Testament literally, you would be a criminal. If you follow everything in the New Testament literally, you would be insane. So Robert Ingersoll, I think. So you're right.
Oh yeah, that sounds familiar. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the problem with dogma. That's really a huge problem with dogma, and that's what when I created Love Chaos, I wanted it to be as far away from that as possible. I wanted it to be something completely undogmatic, regardless of whether that meant it wouldn't be successful as a system. It didn't matter. I was very, very much committed to that intention behind creating it, because that's what helped me, and that's what helped me in a really dark time in my life. And I felt like that was necessary in the occult world, in the world in general, that there would needed to be something where something like this existed, you know.
Yeah, and great job at doing that. And talking about what we talked about, the pre-interview, pre-finding Hermes, we were talking about the addiction in occult circles, mental illness, and for some strange reason, maybe it was Descartes' demon whispering in my head, I said some verbal diarrhea where I told you, Derek, well, the addiction isn't that bad in the occult world. And you corrected me, and I had to catch myself, said, oh my God, it is very high. What are your thoughts on this? Why are people already broken like you and I were when we went into more esoteric practices, and it doesn't offer the solutions to this? Or what are your thoughts on it? I mean, you brought up some of these gods and founders of religions, like, we know how Crowley ended up in his life, not exactly sober.
Right.
Are these systems just not conducive to mental health and sobriety and recovery? What do you think?
No, I think that they can be, certainly. I think that you can definitely follow Crowley and his you can be a Thelemite and be sober, for sure. It just would be difficult. And I think that's true of a lot of different belief systems and practices in the occult world, because there's an emphasis on intoxication. And, and it was something that for me, when I first started getting into the occult, I was heavily into substance use. I did hard drugs, and I drank alcohol, and I did rituals while I was very, high and inebriated. And the gods or the entities that I worked with were gods that personified that. They personified excess intoxication and the sensuality. And the interesting thing for me was deciding that when I was getting sober, that I would continue working with these entities, Babalon being one, and also Pan. And a lot of the entities I work with, they pride themselves on the senses, on pleasure, on transformation of consciousness through lived experiences in the flesh. And I felt like that these were things that I can continue to believe and practice. I could still continue to enjoy life, the sensuality of life, as a sober person. And I do. And it actually was, and what helped me tremendously was understanding that being sober, abstaining from drugs and alcohol, was something that was not necessarily, it didn't have to be a chore. It didn't have to be something where everything was about denial. And so what I did was find things that did give me pleasure, and I do on a daily basis. Is a lot of things that I do. I ask the question: is will this give me pleasure? Will I enjoy it? Does it bring joy to my life? And that a big motivator of what I do is motivated by pleasure. And so I think that it's hard, though, for people to let go, to be themselves, to enjoy life without being inebriated. And you have to really find ways to do that. You have to find ways where you could be comfortable in your own skin without being high, without being, buzzed or drunk. And I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the occult world who are very self-confident, have good self-esteem, are psychologically sound, but I think there's a lot of people who they turn to the occult because as an escape from reality. And I think that they are turning to the occult for solutions to their lives, and unfortunately without seeking a more grounded psychological solutions of really dealing with their own demons, psychological demons. And I think that then they turn to these really outlandish, rituals or entities they work with, and So when you're doing that, when you're running away from your own personal demons, a lot of times that will direct you in getting lost in excess and substances, because you're running away from yourself, and you'll turn towards experiences and people, and then also in the imaginal realm, demons that love that will encourage you. And then once you get hooked to something, it is one of the most difficult things to let go. And once you've been caught with a substance, whether it be alcohol or heroin or crystal meth or cocaine or whatever it may be, that I really do feel like, there's a physical aspect to these drugs. And if demons do exist, there's definitely very powerful demons that are associated with these drugs, and will find a way to enter your mind and enter your whole body. And so people, I think that's, the power of addiction. It works on multiple levels, on a physical level, on a psychological level, and I think in spiritual level too.
Yeah, for sure. And briefly, as we did in our last interview, could you list some of the other alternative support group and addiction solutions out there? Again, the purpose of the show is to give more choices. And last time you gave a lot of choices other than, I got to go to an AA meeting or, rehab.
Right. Well, I think it's really important for people to know that even though we can't go to in-person meetings now, that there are countless meetings on Zoom. There's so many different meetings you can find. You can Google it, and certainly the 12 steps is a great place for people to go. It works for a lot of people. There's AA for Alcoholics Anonymous and NA for Narcotics Anonymous, and then there's pretty much anything you can imagine. There's Gamblers Anonymous, there's Sex Addicts Anonymous, there's Depression Anonymous. I like that one very much. I used to go there with an ex-girlfriend of mine and really liked those meetings a lot. So you have obviously you mentioned the 12 steps, but there are alternatives. And while I value the 12 steps tremendously, that was not what worked for me. Love Chaos was my own thing that worked for me. But in addition to Love Chaos, there was another group that I actually continue to go to weekly meetings on Zoom, which is called SOS, and it's Secular Organizations for Sobriety. Now, this is a good organization and meetings to belong to, where you can have spiritual beliefs. You don't have to be an atheist or agnostic, but it's your own business. So what a lot of these meetings are about is you have a sobriety priority, and everyone talks about their lives, struggles or joys, and about how do you live a sober life. And no one is, if you're the kind of person who doesn't really like to be told what to do, the SOS is perfect, because you'll never find anyone telling you how to achieve sobriety or how to maintain sobriety. And so it's really good for that. And that's why I continue, is I after years of going there, that's a good one. There's also others though too. There's Smart Recovery, which provides a bit more of a rationalistic approach to addiction and to getting help. So Smart Recovery, which is very good. And then there is also Refuge Recovery, which is a Buddhist form of recovery. And they ran into some issues a couple of years ago with the founder, but they still are around. I'm not really quite sure. I used to go to those meetings in person here in LA, and they were great. I'm pretty sure you can find them online. There's other kinds of Buddhist meetings. Also, too, there's also online, you can find many pagan, if people are interested in finding pagan recovery support group, you can find them on Facebook. You can find them many places online. So there's like pagan 12-step groups. So if you wanted to do the 12 steps through a pagan perspective, you can do that. There's many different alternatives out there. I was planning on doing Love Chaos meetings, but I have been having health issues, so I'm not able to do that. And I've been focusing mostly on my fiction my storytelling, which really is where my heart is at anyway. I'm more of a storyteller. But so in addition to all these things, people can also check out my Love Chaos books. There's Love Chaos in Theory and Practice, which gives you a very straightforward approach to the 3 steps of Love Chaos. And so there's the daily living with Love Chaos as a guiding principle. There's Love Chaos Psychology, and there's Love Chaos Magic. And it's a very, straightforward book. I wanted to make it as straightforward as possible, easy to understand, and beneficial in those 3 different areas. And then my most recent book, which is like a call to action for other practitioners to do a ritual for the survival and evolution of human beings in their own way. Obviously, what I set forth in the book is just an example of what I do, all the different elements that go into it. But it certainly is not something that people have to do. But it's a book that's meant to encourage and push people, but motivate people to do something for that purpose of making sure human beings survive. But yeah, definitely, I think if people are struggling, just know, even though we are dealing with coronavirus and we can't be around people in person, you can find whatever your belief system is, you'll find a support group for that. It exists. You just have to do some hunting, doing some looking. And then my recommendation for people is that if you have a belief system and you can't find another group like it, then make one. If you're motivated enough, create something. And people are looking for help right now. And I can guarantee you that whatever you believe, there's other people out there who have very similar beliefs and who want to connect with you.
Well said, and a lot of great choices. And if you can, go outside and try to hang out with people. Strangely, this summer, one thing I did was I created a hummingbird feeder, a squirrel feeder, trying to get raccoons. I decided, well, if I can't be around humans that much, animals are just as fine. They don't criticize you as much as long as you feed them. So
right.
They tend to stay sober longer.
Right.
So,
a strong, like a lot of people are getting pets. Like a lot of the shelters are finding that they're getting, a lot of people coming to get pets, dogs. And
get a companion animal if you're feeling down. Yeah,
definitely.
And just if you want to, as we end, just summarize your book. If you want to summarize it some more, it's again, you break down the different entities you work with, your mission statement at the beginning, and then is the actual ritual, the preparation, the materials, and this will take about a week. And of course, you admit you don't disclose the end or what happened to you.
Right.
You're not supposed to do in any good mystery religion.
There you go. Right. It's something that it was really hard for me because my intention was to write out every detail that I did for those 6 days. That was what I was planning on doing. And I was in the midst of doing it, and I was writing it. And as I was writing it, I kept on hearing these voices telling me not to. And I just, in the beginning, I ignored it. I just thought it was something that was just a bad idea. And as more time went on, it just kept coming at me, and then it made me stop and reflect, and it made me see that, there are certain things that I think is important to keep a mystery and to have it so that when you're working with these entities, it's a very personal relationship, and obviously it deals really strongly with the unseen. So I think when you're trying to develop a strong relationship to help you with the intention of your ritual, you want to have a degree of trust. And some would call it, you're making a pact with something, right? But you're you're building a bond with these entities. And if these entities are asking you to do something, unless it's really harmful to yourself or others, and you shouldn't listen to it for sure, obviously. But if it's something that is basically saying, hey, let's keep this between you and I, it was a very special experience. Just, you've already written a lot of details about the preparation, all the elements that go into the ritual. And I do, like you mentioned, there's the explanation of how I went from being a practitioner of mostly sex magic, dealing with sigils, turning inward and working on, transforming my inner self to change the outer self. This was a big change in trying to put forth ideas, concepts, feelings, entities out into the world. So the work that I was doing with the scrying, conjuration, and the sigils was about putting it out into the world. And so I go into that. I go into, what exactly is what is a grimoire? What is goetic magic? That's been in the last 10 years or so. There's been an enormous renaissance of that, a big, strong interest in that. And how for a long time I just turned away from it. But I found recently that there's definitely some benefits to that practice. And so it goes into, the whole big thing, because whatever you do as a practitioner, whether you're a magician or a mystic, it's really important you put you're very passionate about what you do. When you put a lot of effort into what you do, you'll get great results, and it'll be things that will be truly transformative. And that's really what, aside from the intention of the book, of the survival of the human race and the evolution of it, I also wanted to encourage people to be passionate about their practice and really put a lot of thought into it, whatever it may be, because then that's when you're going to start to see the real personal transformations happen.
Awesome and well said. And for the audience, I will have information on Derek and his book and his website and the show notes, both on YouTube, the website, and everywhere else. So check it out and embrace a little chaos in your life. You'll see how things will get better. But Derek, it's been, again, a pleasure having you on, this time on Finding Hermes. I think your gnosis will help many walk through some doors. And ultimately, it's their decision if they want to go there. But there are treasures on the other side. There are treasures in the undergrounds of our souls and our minds. And as always, again, thanks for coming on Finding Hermes, Derek, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, Miguel. It was a pleasure, as it was before the first time, and it was really a lot of fun being here with you on this different platform, a different way. It was very cool, a really great experience, and hope this can help people out there.
It will. Thank you, Derek.
Thank you, Miguel.
And there you have it, our interview with Derek Hunter on his book, The End of the World, as well as his 2 Love Chaos books. Good stuff, and I hope you found some more tools to help you walk through those doors. After all, Hermes is the god of doorways. The door hinge belongs to Hermes. And a lot of good gnosis in our interview with Derek. Good to have him on. Of course, one of the main takeaways or themes of the show was the idea of embracing chaos and uncertainty in your life. And that may not seem something that's very easy to do. There is this quote by Sigmund Freud that I thought of, and I have it right here along with my notes. And it goes, as Sigmund Freud once pointed out, the human mind has a low tolerance threshold for ambiguity. It clutches at straws in order to avoid drowning in uncertainty. And yeah, that's from, I actually got that quote from Jason Horsley's new book, 16 Maps of Hell. Good book. But anyway, it is very true. We want certainty. We want to create patterns to go along with our lives and to navigate this existence. But that's just not the way the world is. And we have to accept it if we want a better mental health. I always like Gnosticism, or one of the reasons I was attracted to Gnosticism is that unlike other faiths that posit that we live in a somewhat harmonious universe with the code and the laws just, moving along well, creating a good environment for us. That's not, that's the opposite of Gnosticism that says, no, we are thrown into chaos and we must somehow create an order within us to navigate this entropy that is the material universe. Yes, and I am aware in the interview I was moving around a lot. Guess my own anxiety was rising during the interview, but I'm calm right now here, not moving around in my chair like in the interview with Derek. It also reminds me the idea of uncertainty that's seen in Fight Club when the protagonist and Tyler Durden are arguing in the car with some other fellows about just letting go of everything so you can really embrace the energies of life. And Tyler convinces or commands the narrator and the others in the car to take off their seatbelts. He lets go of the wheel and the car crashes. They all survive, but in the wreckage, Tyler rises up and says, "We just had a near-life experience." And I think that's the goal of embracing uncertainty and chaos and the ways of Hermes, who is somewhat of a chaotic god. It's that near-life experience, that ecstasy. And how do you do that? Well, as we talked about in the interview, it comes down to being the trickster god, tricking your own mind as Hermes would do to create a transformation. Hermes is also the god of transition. And that really a simple way of doing it is just changing our habits, taking new ways. When you're driving, take another route. When you're walking, take another route. When you're walking to your car, instead of getting in the car, just jump on the hood for a few seconds. As we discuss, and the idea from Aleister Crowley, it's removing some word from your vocabulary, like the or it or something like that for a month, or maybe just today, add a new word to your vocabulary. If you're going into the bathroom at your job or a family house, just do the chicken dance, something like that. Again, like the Datis of France, just trick yourself, change your habits slowly, and there will be transformation, and slowly you will be able to embrace the chaos of the world. And of course, there are esoteric practices like meditation and so forth, which will allow you to slowly let go of your attachments and have that near life experience. The other thing I wanted to talk about too is the idea, and the theme of this, of finding Hermes, as you've noticed, is the idea of depression, suicide, and anxiety. And unfortunately, it has really blown up today and just getting worse. It's not so much part of the accepted narration of the internet or the news media, but it's here and it's hitting us hard, and it's breaking my own heart. I was just reading an article the other day, about how in Japan, in November, more Japanese killed themselves than died of the virus in all of 2020. It's terrible. And you can say, well, Japan has a different culture, but when you do the research and breaking down, it has to do with isolation, depression, not being able to embrace uncertainty in that country, and just a mental health breakdown that's happening to the Japanese. And it's probably here on our shores in the West, and it's doing a lot of damage from what I'm hearing and so forth. There's also an article about how mental health wards and doctors are being completely strained by kids having mental issues, and it really is surging, and it really is stressing. So it's something I wanted to address now, and doing that by bringing the ideas. Before I get to that, There is an article I read in Psyche magazine. I am flashing the web address right now in the video. The article is entitled How to Talk About Suicide and Save the Life of a Loved One. Good article, and something you should read, especially during the holidays. The holidays are always hard on people's psyches, but definitely more today. So if you notice any loved ones or colleagues that might be suffering, this is a good article. So perhaps you can make a difference. And if you're suffering, so it's a good article for you to get help or ask for help. It has a lot of good stuff, and it breaks it down into 4 points. Those are: end the cycle of guilt and shame, cultivate emotional intelligence, in an emergency, call for help, stay alert to triggering language. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Furthermore, I'd like to bring in the ideas of Rachel Connerly, which I have been repeating lately, but I do think it's important, and she's done a lot of work from the Jungian standpoint. And she explains through the work, also her own research, and through the work of Robert Johnson, about how suicide is a complex. And we've discussed a lot about complexes this year on Aeon Byte and Finding Hermes. And a complex is basically a constellation of emotions, trauma, the past, swirling around an archetypal core that basically comes up at certain times and takes over your sensible, rational ego. And, well, it's like a temporal possession. And some of the examples that I've given on the show is road rage, something that triggers you with your spouse or your girlfriend or boyfriend, and suddenly it feels like you're just reenacting something your parents did, and you can't control it. Again, the complex is a sort of possession, and we all have many complexes that can take over us. And, well, can do a lot of damage, and many times a complex is this big mood that takes over you and suddenly just leaves you wondering, what the hell happened? Why did I lose my temper when I was driving? Why did I don't know, why did I get into this fight with my spouse? It seemed something I'd always done. That my parents always did, and so forth. So I'd like to read what Rachel sent me or has written, and we will continue to discuss this in Finding Hermes and Aeon Byte, because, again, this is important, and these are really some hard times for a lot of people. Should we cue in some music? Suicide is a complex. It happens when the ego becomes so distressed it wants to pull the plug on the whole operation. But rationally speaking, what exactly is this thing that suicide pulls the plug on? It's the ego feeling trapped in a complex, locked in a worldview it finds intolerable. Suicide is a solution in search of a problem. The actual problem has to do with the fact that we've outgrown our old worldview or paradigm. The suicide impulse happens when the ego is struggling under the weight of a paradigm more powerful and energized than the ego's ability to respond rationally. It feels like a 300-pound complex sitting on your 150-pound ego. Robert Johnson talked about how the impulse towards suicide has a seed of change connected to it, but it's misguided. The seed of change is the recognition that something has to die. Well, right you are. Something does need to die, but it's not your physical self. It's your worldview. And of course, our worldview is the last thing the ego wants to give up. It refuses to continue on the challenging soul-building adventure. After all, the worldview is the ego's GPS system, its organizing principle for life. Changing our mind is the hardest thing we ever do. That's why the Greeks refer to it as metanoia, which means a spiritual conversion. A new worldview is a psycho-spiritual conversion. It's the ultimate change, and the masculine in particular doesn't change easily. Change by nature is feminine. So the masculine must embrace and learn the feminine approach to change. Depression is not a disease. It's a wake-up call that you've outgrown your worldview and you can't live there anymore. Literally. Spirituality is just about waking up. So yes, it's all about killing your worldview, not yourself. So don't harm yourself, and realize that you can transform, as the promise of Hermes. What did Philip K. Dick say? Since the universe is made of information, then it can be said that information will save us. And there is information coming at you. It's just that your ego is blocking it. There's information coming from within, from without. There is information out there that wants you to go on a soul-building journey. Each one of us has it and the potential and is on this journey. Each one of us, if we are to believe Gnosticism and other mystic pursuits, is a God in the becoming, and we all can get there. So please don't go anywhere. And if you see somebody hurting, let them know that you care, and let them know that there is help. There is help from within. There is help from above. There is a way. Each one of us has an amazing potential, has a sacred duty, has a mission in this world. And once we align ourselves with all these energies and parts of ourselves, then it becomes apparent. And then, well, there's no need for the body to die. And we just embrace some new worldviews, a new alchemical transformation. Again, that's one of the domains that Hermes is in charge with. So don't go anywhere. There is a solution, as they say in AA. And there are many paths and tools you can take. But just ask for help. The universe is here to help you, and I can help you if you need help, if you want to call me or somebody. Ask for help. It's there. And of course, we will continue to give you solutions that work for you and only you in finding Hermes, as well as Aeon Byte, because I saw this coming this year in 2020, and I want to do something to help you, to offer more choices, and to convince people that they don't have to end their physical existence. They just need to change their worldview. And if there is depression, it's just a communication telling you that something has to change. So that's all I got. And I hope my little speech helps you in any way. Go through a door, put your cards on the table, and find your own Hermes. Thank you very much for being here. And again, don't go anywhere.